Hello, good morning. Good to see you again. Hopefully again. If not, welcome for the first time. Today we have a bunch of really cool videos we're going to record for you, starting with one about one of my heroes, Ludwig Wittgenstein, who is many people regard as the greatest philosopher of all time, someone who many believe solved all the problems of philosophy. And we're going to tell you about him from 3 points of view. First, why he's my hero, why he meant so much to me, and the story of his life might bring tears to your eyes. It's pretty incredible. And secondly, what his breakthrough in philosophy, how it kind of led to what we call cognitive therapy or team CBT. And how it can be helpful to you if you've ever thought that you're inferior or you're worthless or you're not as good as other people or you beat up on yourself with a lot of self-critical thoughts. So there's a lot in the story for you, and you'll also learn in this video the solution to all the problems of philosophy. Now, you probably don't give a damn about the problems of philosophy, but you might find it kind of interesting. And I'm so glad to be joined by you, Sevda, who's at the app team. But Sevda, like everyone on our Feeling Great app team, has a tremendous interest in issues of mood and how we break out of bad moods, both from personal experience as well as professional experience, working with all of us. So thank you, Sevda.
Thank you for having me here.
I made a list of maybe cool topics before we started, and one of them that Sevda settled on was Wittgenstein, Ludwig Wittgenstein, and sounds like a big name. And who was this guy, and why should you care about him, and why did I care about him? I heard about him my senior year at Amherst College. I was a philosophy major, philosophy of science, and thinking of going on to philosophy graduate school, actually. And one morning I was eating with Phil Allen, who was one of my roommates. He was a super brilliant guy, perhaps the top person in our class, and he became a physicist, and he's now a physicist, a professor at Stony Brook doing solid-state physics. But he was a really humble and friendly fellow in spite of his incredible intelligence. And we were eating in Valentine Hall where we, got our meals. And I was telling him, I'm trying to figure out what to do my dissertation on, or my thesis for the honors thing your senior year. You're supposed to write this excellent paper or something on some topic of your choice. And he said, well, why don't you do it on Ludwig Wittgenstein? And I said, who's Ludwig Wittgenstein? And he said, well, he's rumored to be the greatest philosopher who ever lived. He died in 1949 or 1950. And when he was alive, he struggled with depression and never tried to publish anything. But then, after he died, they found this metal box under his dormitory bed in Cambridge or Oxford, wherever he was teaching, a metal box with some notes from a weekly seminar he would have in his dormitory room. And then that was published as a book called Philosophical Investigations. And when people read it, well, he said very few people can understand it, but it's rumored to contain the solution to all the problems of philosophy. So he said, if you do your thesis on Wittgenstein, and then at the end of the year, you'll have to defend it before a committee of faculty people in the Department of Philosophy, they won't be able to challenge you because only 7 people in the world understand the book, and none of them are on the Amherst faculty. So I said, oh, that sounds cool. And so I got this book. I was all excited. I couldn't believe this claim. Somebody solved all the problems of philosophy. And I started reading it, and I couldn't understand it at all. But it wasn't because he was using big words. It was because what he was saying didn't seem to make sense. And the book started out by talking about a bricklayer. And so just imagine there's a master bricklayer. He builds beautiful stone walls, and he has a younger apprentice working with him. And so when he's ready to put a new stone on the wall, he says stone or brick or something like that, and the apprentice brings him one. And he said, that's all that's really going on there. Now, are you ready to give up the work of Aristotle and Plato? Do you see the fundamental error that they made? And I would think, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And that was like number one. And it was just numbered vignettes, 200 or 300 of them. They were in English on one side and in German on the other. And each little thing didn't seem to make sense to me. And then he'd say, think about a piece of string. It's all these fibers woven together. But there's no one fiber that goes from one end to the other. And now do you see why the free will problem is a kind of a joke? And I would say, no, I don't at all. What are you talking about? And it was very frustrating. I could see why no one could understand him, because he was saying simple things that didn't appear to make sense. And then in the spring, I was walking across the Stanford campus, or the Amherst campus, and it suddenly came to me in a flash what he was trying to say. And I suddenly understood the solution to all the problems of philosophy. And do humans have free will? Is the universe real? Is the universe one? Or, all these things that philosophers have been arguing about for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so I went to my supervisor and said, I don't think I'm going to go to philosophy graduate school because I understand the problems, the solution to all the problems of philosophy. And I think Wittgenstein wanted his students, once they understood him, to give up philosophy and to do something practical. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'll go into psychology graduate school instead, because that's practical, and I can counsel people. And then my advisor pushed me to go to medical school instead, so I could be a psychiatrist and prescribe drugs. That's a story for another day. But that was how I got started with Wittgenstein. And I just tell you a few highlights from his life, and then I'll show how it relates to depression and anxiety and cognitive therapy. He grew up in a home. His father was the wealthiest man in Europe. And he didn't go to school much, but they had tutors for him. And he was obsessed with philosophy ever since he was a child. And he was so obsessed with it, it like tortured him. And his goal was to find a solution to the problems of philosophy, so he could get rid of it and stop doing it, and stop trying to solve these problems. The humans have free will and all these, silly things that philosophers get hung up about. And he wanted to be in the army. He wanted to fight in war, and he was turned down for, I think, the German army or the Austrian or something in World War I. But he was able to join the British army. Took him, and so he fought for the British, and then was captured and was a prisoner of war. And he was about 17. And while he was a prisoner of war, he wrote this little booklet called Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. And he sent it to Bertrand Russell in London, because Bertrand Russell was regarded as the top philosopher in the world. So he said, maybe he would find this interesting. And he thought at that time that it contained the solution to all the problems of philosophy. And Bertrand Russell got the book and thought, this is maybe the greatest philosopher who ever lived. This young man but he didn't know where he was or how to find him. And Wittgenstein was satisfied that he had solved the problems of philosophy, so he decided to do something practical. And he said, I'll go to, I think, Sweden or Norway and live in a fishing village, and I'll learn to become a fisherman. And he went and tried that, and it didn't work out because he didn't have any background in fishing, and he couldn't support himself. And then he got a job in a grammar school teaching children, but he got frustrated with them and started shouting at them because they didn't understand what he was trying to teach them. And I think he hit one or something like that, and so he was fired. And so he kind of became homeless until his father died, and then he inherited the greatest fortune in Europe, and he was the wealthiest man in Europe, and he gave all of his money away in about 1 week because he thought that money is kind of corrupts people. And then when he was around, I think, 40 years old, he ran into somebody. I think he was just kind of homeless and trying to find something to do with his life. And somebody said that a Swedish economics student was had heard about this Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, which meanwhile had become the biggest thing in Europe, and started philosophical schools of philosophy based on that. And Wittgenstein was like super famous, but didn't even realize it. And someone said that an economics student from Sweden had read it and found a flaw in it. And this is the flaw. And he said, he presented to Wittgenstein what the flaw was, and Wittgenstein realized it was a flaw, and it killed him. And he was so upset. And he said, oh, well, I've got to go to college now and study philosophy and start all over. So he went to, I think, Oxford, where Bertrand Russell was the department chairman. And he applied to be an undergraduate so he could study philosophy. And someone in the admissions department recognized that name and showed the application to Bertrand Russell and said, is this the young man you've been looking for? He's applying to be a freshman here at Oxford. And Bertrand Russell said, bring him to me. I've been wanting to meet him and talk to him. And so he had an interview, and Bertrand Russell said, I'm sorry, we can't accept you as a student here. And Bertrand Russell, and then he said, why not? Bertrand Russell said, you're already recognized as the greatest philosopher of the 20th century and maybe the greatest philosopher of all time. We have nothing to teach you.
Wow.
But we would offer you a fully tenured professorship if you'll teach in our department. And Wittgenstein said, oh, I can't do that because I don't know anything. And my first book was proven wrong, and I couldn't stand in a classroom and teach. And Bertrand Russell said, you must do it. We'll do anything to get you into our department. And they finally made an arrangement with him where he wouldn't have to teach in a classroom. But if he would at least let people come to his dormitory room once a week, and he said the greatest philosophers of Europe will come every week, and you can have a seminar for them. And so he agreed to that, and so every week these famous philosophers would come, and he would typically shout at them. Because he was saying, can't you see how stupid your thinking is, how stupid you are? What you're saying is nonsensical. And they couldn't get it, but they realized it was something phenomenal. And then he would take notes each week and put them in this metal box, thinking if the dormitory burned down or something, maybe people would find those notes someday. And then eventually he became homeless. He gave up teaching because he felt that he just had nothing to offer. And one of his students, Norman Malcolm, who just loved him, had meanwhile, graduated and gotten his PhD and went and became quite a famous American philosopher at Princeton or one of the Ivy League schools. Heard that his teacher had become homeless and needed money, and he arranged for Wittgenstein to come to the United States on a ship to give an East Coast presentation on philosophy. And Norman Malcolm was so excited that his teacher was going to come, and it was advertised all over Eastern United States, and all the top philosophy people came, and they had 1,000 people there, and the ship came in just the day of the presentation, and Malcolm went to meet him. And Malcolm was shocked because he looked like a homeless person, and he was unshaven and wearing shabby clothes, and they had to walk from there to the presentation. And some of Malcolm's students said, "Who are you walking with?" And Norman Malcolm said, "This is the great Ludwig Wittgenstein." And they thought it was a joke. So then he came in and just wearing those clothes gave this presentation. But it was really sad because Wittgenstein himself struggled with depression and often had suicidal urges, and he had several brothers who all committed suicide. So there was strong suicide in that family, and it was so sad because he went into spells where he lost confidence that he had contributed anything, and he himself couldn't see the brilliance of the contribution that he had made. But his favorite student, Norman Malcolm, wrote a book called Ludwig Wittgenstein, a memoir. So if you ever wanted to understand the work of Wittgenstein in just 100 pages, it's an easy read. But it's very moving. Every time I read it, I cry because I'm so sad because he was so lonely because people couldn't understand him, and what he had to say was so incredible. And I just always wished I could have said, I got it. It took me, 6 months of being confusion, and then it hit me the same way it hit you, that you had this sudden insight about language. And but anyway, that was kind of the story of his life. One last little tidbit was that Norman Malcolm went to the Carnegie Foundation or something like that, and said that Wittgenstein was penniless, and that he was the greatest philosopher of the modern era, and could they give him a grant to support him? And they said they'd gladly give him a grant, but he had to have a grant application. And then Wittgenstein, well, what's the shortest one I could do? And they said, well, if you write one paragraph, it would be enough. So, and then every time I read that paragraph, it brings tears to my eyes because it's not what you'd think of a grant application. He said, I think my best work is behind me. And if you support me, I can't promise anything new. And it was just kind of a statement of someone who was clearly depressed. And it was sad to me that Wittgenstein couldn't apply his own principles that were so transformative to the world of philosophy, to his own thinking and his own self-criticalness. But anyway, that's a little bit of the story of his life. He went back to England, and I think he became homeless again, and found out that he had some kind of cancer, prostate cancer, terminal cancer. and he never sought treatment. I think he thought he didn't deserve treatment or some such thing. And one of the doctors, he said, you've only got a few weeks to live. And if you don't have a place to stay, you can come and stay with my wife and me, and we'll take care of you until you die. That's how he died, and his last words before he died is, tell them that I had a wonderful life. And so anyway, that's kind of the story of Wittgenstein, but it does have something to do with you, a tremendous amount, and we'll talk about that next. But
I'm really curious, actually. How would you kind of summarize that problem, that conclusion that Wittgenstein came to, that only about 7 people in the world understood, and how that's perhaps influenced your own work and Team CBT?
Yeah. Well, again, I'll explain it. You got it this morning. You're like number 8 in the world to understand him. But it's a very simple thing. And just to say the essence of it without going into the details or how to understand it, let's say you have this, you're working on the free will problem, and then we'll come to maybe your problem, which is thinking you're worthless or you're not good enough. Those are like the problems of philosophy, and they also have a solution. But the free will problem, like, do humans have free will? And it's argued back and forth. I was telling you, even now at Stanford, some theoretically very brilliant people, some guy wrote a best-selling book. I think he's this genius guy at Stanford. You'd probably have heard of his name.
What's his name?
I can't remember what it is, but he's big on humans don't have free will because everything. Oh
yes, is it Sapolsky?
Yeah,
I remember Sapolsky.
And so it's propped up again, and he himself has gotten sucked in to this nonsensical way of thinking, what Wittgenstein said is the problems of philosophy are language that's out of gear. When you try to figure out, do humans have free will, you're assuming that free will is something that we could have or not have, that it has a meaning. Yeah. But he says it has no meaning. It's just a sound that comes out of your mouth. The only meaning of a word is the way we use it in the English language. And so are you free to make a video today?
Yes.
And that's we know what that means. And then, the store might have a sale on soda pop. If you buy 6, you get a 7th bottle of Coca-Cola for free, when we know what that means. But when you say, do humans have free will? Well, you have to say what you're talking about. What is it that we either have or don't have? And there's actually nothing there. It's what's called an empty set. It has no meaning unless you say, if you're free, David, pick up your pen. Okay, I picked up my pen, I'm free. But they're saying, oh no, you're following the laws of science. It's just a kind of tautological thinking, or thinking words have meaning when they don't. It's language out of gear, and that's what actually the basis of cognitive therapy and Team CBT too. Because when you're feeling down, you think you have a self that's not good enough. So if someone criticizes you, you feel defensive. You've got to protect yourself, your ego. But do humans have a self? Do you have a self? Do selves exist? That's another nonsensical concept. Instead of trying to solve that problem, you just give it up and live your life. I'm enjoying doing this video with you, Sevda. I don't know if anyone's going to care about it. I know it's 100 times too long, so everyone will tell us this is destined to failure on the internet. But maybe somebody will see it and be moved and understand something. But the idea is that when you're telling yourself, I'm inferior, I'm a loser, I'm a hopeless case, you're labeling yourself again with words that it sounds like they have meaning, but they don't. And so when I'm working with people, my goal is not, if you're feeling worthless, to prove to you that you're worthwhile, because there's no such thing as a worthless human being. There's no such thing as a worthwhile human being. We're all humans. We all have flaws. We all have have strengths. But when you get into these kind of categories where we judge people, they create tremendous pain and suffering for people. And maybe Wittgenstein had that too, maybe thinking he wasn't good enough, thinking his contributions weren't good enough, and thinking in all of these illogical ways. But my 10 forms of cognitive distortion, which are all over the internet now, all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, emotional reasoning, should statement, self-blame. These distortions in your thinking are the cause of your depression and your anxiety, not your flaws. It's not that you're flawed or that you should be better than you are. The problem is that you're beating up on yourself. And with Team CBT, we've developed well over 100 ways of helping you stop doing that to yourself, and to learn to love and accept yourself. Are you flawed? Absolutely, you're flawed. I'm flawed too. Yesterday, I realized a big mistake I had made, and was kind of beating up on myself last night about it. But at any rate, learning to let go of these illogical ways that we create misery in our lives, that's what Team CBT is all about. And if you're interested in seeing how it could work for you, Sevda will now tell us.
Yeah, so Team CBT has actually personally changed my life. I got introduced to David's work about 8 years ago, way before I started working at the company. I think what I can say based on what you shared about the inspiration here is it's all about defining what these terms even mean, right?
Yeah.
What is, flawed? What does it mean to say I'm a failure? What is success?
Yeah, for example, is a failure, is that someone who fails some of the time or all of the time?
Yeah.
So if you say some of the time, then we're all failures, right? And if you say all of the time, then no one's a failure, because we all succeed at most of the things we do every day and have ever since we were born. And so the idea is not to give up the idea that you're a failure and decide, oh, I'm a winner, I'm a success, like all that positive thinking, motivational stuff, but rather to let go of those concepts entirely and focus on living your life. I'm so grateful that we can talk today, and I can tell a Wittgenstein story in front of a camera. Maybe some people will watch this and enjoy it. And here's my little cat Obi, who taught me so much about how easy it is to love without being flawed. He was just a feral cat who came to our house, and he was on the verge of death. He looked like a concentration camp victim, and he came to our kitchen door and held his paw up, and it was as big as his head. And I realized he must have been in a fight or something, so he couldn't hunt, and he was on the verge of death. And we kind of adopted him, although he was feral. He was terrified of us. And he would snarl and try to bite us at first, but he eventually became my best pal, and he just taught me about how beautiful life can be. Hey, look how flawed he is. He's got little nicks here. I mean, we brought him back to health. He had to have surgery on his paw, and he became my best friend in the world. And it wasn't, joy wasn't about being special. He wasn't special. He was just an ordinary, average feral cat. But he brought joy into my life beyond anything you can imagine. In fact, I have a T-shirt on here that I'm wearing. I forgot. It says, "Best cat dad ever." My wife gave this to me as a present in honor of Obi. But the goal of life is to live our life, to enjoy our interactions, and to cherish what we've got, and to appreciate what we've got, and not to think we're going to become special or better than, because those are just nonsensical concepts. And if you don't get it right now, but that would be appropriate, because it's really hard to get this. Once you get it, it's so simple and so clear.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of techniques to help you change the way you think and feel. What should the user do, or the viewer do?
So when you were talking about the philosophy behind Team CBT and what inspired you, it made me think about one of the techniques that you've developed, one of the more than 140 techniques to help us understand, our depression and anxiety and get over these feelings. In the app, actually, there is a technique that you can use that's about defining the terms. That's around the idea of language. And when you label yourself a certain way, actually, what does that even mean? So we have our AI app called the Feeling Great app, where you can go and, you can try it if you like, and you sign up and you talk to the AI, and it walks you through these techniques to actually show you how ridiculous some of these beliefs can be. And, so that's one thing that our little audience over here can do.
You might be wondering what the Feeling Great app is. Hi, I'm Adam. I'm a licensed therapist and one of the designers of the Feeling Great app. The Feeling Great app is an AI chat tool that's meant to not just help you feel a little bit better, not just help you find relief, but truly feel great. And the methods in the app are developed by the legendary David Burns. And in a very structured and routine way, they're meant to walk you through the exact process that David uses to help his clients feel better. And to our surprise, the app has been incredibly effective. You might wonder, have people gotten 20% better, 30% better, 40% better? No. Believe it or not, in one single 1.5 hour chat session, people have actually seen a 70% improvement on average in their negative mood. So if you'd like to feel great, and gosh, would we ever love that to you, download our app in the App Store today.
You can take a free ride on the Feeling Great app if you're interested in exploring it. It works really fast. It's very powerful. It's like a Ferrari automobile with a 800 horsepower engine. It works very, very quickly to help people overcome negative feelings of depression, anxiety, loneliness, inadequacy, hopelessness, even anger. This is about helping you change the way you think and feel. And we're about to sign off for this video, and Sevda will give us the formal, amazing sign-off.
When you change the way you think, you can change the way you feel. And if you want to find out how, just follow us and subscribe and, check out the Feeling Great app. We're here to help you through this.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you. We love you all, and come back soon.